Jack Strabrowski here. Let's talk a little bit about marketing at Brightline, Florida. The reason that we want to talk about this is because their current intention is to basically take the marketing strategies and model that they are using in Florida and bring it with them out west to Brightline West here in from SoCal to Las Vegas. So let's just take a quick look at this. So, so when we went up online and looked, of course, we were able to identify Brightline Florida's marketing activities, and these are the activities that they like to highlight. Um, and of course, these are lessons to be learned for Brightline West. One is they talk about surveys. As part of our ongoing marketing research, we conduct customer surveys of our long distance riders from time to time. And they talk a little bit about this. Well, they do survey their customers. I'm not sure why they need to, um, um, why they ask them these particular questions. If you were going to survey your customers, perhaps you'd like to find out um, what they like about the train and what they don't like about the train. I guess I would be trying to figure out what is it that creates a situation where someone decides to take the train in Florida instead of driving or taking an airplane. But they try to argue that they are data driven with surveys. They talk about the app and the idea that you can buy a ticket right on the app. Well, of course, you can buy an airline ticket right on the app, and they talk here about shifting people from third party bookers, people like Travelocity, and I think um, that they are probably going to want to at least rethink this a little bit as they go along. They talk about their website, and they say that our website continues to climb, attracting 2 million visitors monthly. Um, I don't know if that's a big number or a small number for them, uh, but but they do spend some time and effort working on SEO and SEM and trying to make their website a hub of information and activity for Brightline, Florida. They talk about their advertising. They say that we use a blend of traditional and digital advertising. Our traditional advertising focuses on billboards. So their advertising campaign is a billboard campaign, which, by the way, is not really traditional marketing, but it's okay. And digital advertising, and I'm not sure what their digital advertising program looks specifically like. I suspect if you wanted to find out, you would have to go up and become part of their rewards program. I would think that if you were to go up and click on Brightline Florida's um, website 9 or 10 times and then wait to see what happens, that I would expect for you to see some advertising that follows you around the web based on which sorts of websites you clicked on. And so when they talk about website advertising or they talk about online advertising, I'm not really sure exactly what they're doing, but I'm sure they're doing something. Then they talk about their loyalty programs. Here's an interesting quote that they put in here, and that is, once established, we estimate that the loyalty program will help us generate an incremental 1,500 riders per month, increasing over time as our customer database grows. So they figure that the loyalty program is going to create 1,500 um, rides a month. If you take that and run that out, that's, I guess, it's 180,000 a year. Um, there's nothing wrong with an additional 180,000 riders, um, but they're so far off from their ridership goals that I'm not sure a loyalty program that has a goal of 1,500 more riders per month um, really moves the needle much. But I applaud their idea of developing a loyalty program. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. They talk about doing events, and they talk about their 4,700 Taylor Swift fans on their first of a kind sing along train experience from Orlando to Miami to see Taylor Swift perform. Um, Once again, um, I I think that this is more geared towards social media marketing than it is actual ridership. But once again, I think I applaud it for being an awareness building activity for the train. And I don't think it's the worst way to potentially market a train. They talk about distribution as one of their key marketing activities, and they talk about travel companies. Of getting their bookings from third parties, and of course I believe that Brightline Florida is working very hard to build their distribution network so people can acquire tickets from a variety of sources, including much like airlines do, from third party bookers or directly from their website. And then they spend a whole bunch of time talking about partnerships, and they talk about that uh, 20 to 25% of their business is driven by partnerships with cruise lines that come in and out of the Fort Lauderdale and Miami ports, theme parks. Of course, that would be a variety of theme parks in Orlando, hotels, even airlines, which I think is interesting since you would think that airlines would be competitors, but they are trying to build partnerships with the airlines, and then sports partnerships. So they spend a lot of time talking about partnerships. Let's spend. I just wanted to spend a couple minutes on a Brightline Rewards program because many of you have not had a course in database marketing, and of course one of the topics that is covered in the database marketing course are loyalty programs. And if you don't know much about loyalty programs, you better learn because that is one of the key ideas um, that most companies use now to try to build a database of their customers so that they can communicate directly with them. They all talk about developing rewards programs. They refer to Brightline refers to their program as a loyalty program, and generally speaking, loyalty programs and rewards programs and frequency programs are all the same thing, except that in many cases, a loyalty program, at least in theoretical terms, focuses more on loyalty building, and a rewards program is simply a way to try to get customers to keep coming back by giving them some sort of an incentive. Most of the time, it's a financial incentive, as here. Their rewards program turn every trip into a reward. So they're saying, take a trip and get some money back. Take a trip and get some rewards from us. They explain how it works. You join, you earn, and you redeem. Now, I think it's interesting that their strategy on this, and I'm not sure who does their rewards program for them. I'm sure they're not running it themselves. Um, their program is designed with no redemption minimums and use the points as you earn them. Now, there's lots of rewards programs that run like this now. CVS and Walgreens rewards programs are the ones that come to mind to me. Every time I go into Walgreens to buy something, they say, "Oh, by the way, you've got 85 cents in your rewards program. Do you want to use it now?" And of course, I always say, "Yeah," because there's no reason to let that money sit around in Walgreens' pocket. I might as well go ahead and use it up as soon as it's available. Um, it's a rewards program. I'm not sure that this would be the one that I would recommend for them, and I'm not so sure that students that took the uh, the strategic marketing database course at UNLV would think that this is the right way to do this. So it says, "What's in it for you?" Clearly, when you read this, it's not really a loyalty program, but it's more like a Walgreens rewards program, as I discussed. How do you shape this behavior? How does this shape behavior? And the answer, the sort of a hint to that answer is, well, it doesn't. Plus, it does cost a lot of money to run it, and you have to account for accrued rewards in your accounting. And so there are some real expenses to this. And the net of this is that they hope that sometime in the future it will generate 15,000 extra rides a month. All right, so you got a chance in one of your situation analysis reports to talk about the marketing, the Brightline Florida's marketing strengths and weaknesses. So let's talk just a couple of minutes here about their strengths, right? So what are their strengths? Well, when you read through that, clearly the partnership programs are one of their strengths. That's probably their primary number one thing that they're really doing, making a lot of effort on, and I don't know what kind of results they're having with it, but they are spending a lot of time and effort on building these partnerships. Maybe a strength might be their events. Um, I I'm not sure how they're using it, but I could see where perhaps the events might be potentially very successful in helping to position and build awareness, at least for taking the train rather than driving or flying. Um, their distribution, yeah, I don't know. Their advertising, well, remember, they're doing billboard advertising and some online advertising. I'm not so sure that that's one of their strengths. How about social media? I'm not sure what their social media footprint is exactly. I've gone up online and tried to take a look at it. I haven't gone in and ran the numbers, and I really haven't gone up on SEMrush and looked at their web analytics. But they're at least doing some social media. I don't know how successful it is, and I don't know to the degree that this is driving any um, revenues and ridership. What some of their weaknesses appear to be? Well, how about maybe it's product strategy? I'm not sure what their product strategies are. Uh, and they have what they call a high speed train, but it runs on a regular rail, and it's not particularly fast. But I don't think that they have any simple solution for that. But some of the product strategies really are putting together different packaging and that sort of stuff, and coming up with different promotions and that are or different product options. Right now they have basically two tickets, right? A regular ticket and some sort of a deluxe ticket. Um, think about their product strategies and think about whether or not they're doing a good job with that positioning. I'm not sure how they have the high speed rail positioned compared to uh, air travel and compared to driving. I think that this is an interesting area that really does need some thought. I'm not sure what their positioning uh, statement is, and I'm not sure what sorts of uh, slogans and positioning they're trying to communicate. Their communication plan should theoretically, of course, be IMC driven, but I'm not sure what their messaging is. I've seen a little bit of messaging online. I've seen a couple of I've seen a half a dozen billboards. They were originally a short haul operation where they ran their first set of trains up and down the eastern seaboard from about uh, West Palm Beach down to Miami, and they had a very lucrative business. And then when they decided to get into when they finally were able to open their long haul um, part of their business in late 2023, um, they really sort of decided to move away from really doing a good job of servicing their short haul customers, and that's obviously not a good strategy because what they did was all they did was disappoint their short haul customers, act like they weren't important. They were sort of second class operate. That was sort of a second class operation. They reduced the number of trains and increased the price dramatically, doubling the price basically, and really basically upset those customers and turn them from regular riders to people who use some other train or some other um, transportation vehicle to get themselves up and down the eastern seaboard of Florida. How about their customer engagement? I don't know much about that. They 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 they. How about really understanding the customer journey? How does a person end up taking the and maybe even product use segmentation here about why do people decide to take the train rather than drive or rather than um, fly? Um, what is the whole customer journey? What is that all about? How do they make that decision? I think they need to take a long, hard look at their pricing strategy. They basically have missed their pricing ticket pricing estimates by about 40%. So they are discounting these tickets by about 40% to get the ridership numbers that they have. I think they do want to take a real look at their loyalty, so really their rewards program, and rethink this and in terms of what they're trying to accomplish with it. What are the behaviors that they're trying to shape? Um, and then I think that they want to maybe take another look at distribution, scheduling of trains, all that sort of stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So that it appears perhaps that they have more weaknesses than strengths. You might say, how come? Well, to think about why that's the case, you might want to ask yourself, well, do we know why they have strengths in one area but weaknesses in these other areas? And there are lots of reasons probably why this is the case. Um, I'm not so sure that the people who run Brightline are great marketers, but they do need to understand that this is a business that is going. It is a competitive business, and they do have to compete with airlines directly. And I'm not sure if it's direct or not, but they also have to compete, and they really have to get a large percentage of their ridership from people who would otherwise drive. Well, one of the things that we need to look at in terms of why their marketing strategy looks like it does, and its successfulness and its focus is take a look at the senior vice president's background. And so. Uh, and so I always think that this is important when you're looking at the marketing of an organization. To understand how did they get to where they got to today, and of course, they have a senior vice president that they hired 3 years ago now. They've been working for them for 3 years, June 22nd, 22 to June 25. And they don't, and so that person's been on the job for a little over 3 years, and you can see what the results of their strategy are. Now, before that person had this job, they were um, they were self-employed for um, 2.5 years, and of course they still have and so they started their own company. Now, lots of people in marketing who either quit their job or get laid off from their job, or they get dismissed in some way from their job, start their own companies. If you look at resumes, you'll see a lot of people who are in the social media marketing business, or the um, online marketing business in particular, but also in the advertising business. If they don't have a job, they start their own company. And of course, this particular person talks about all the great things that they do. Um, so right before this job, they had a 2+ year situation um, where they were self-employed. Before that, they worked for the Phillips Center for the Performing Arts, which is a huge performing arts center in Orlando, bigger than the Smith Center actually. And they've been in business longer than the Smith Center, so they have more programs and more, and they probably have it's a pretty well run business. They worked there. This person worked there for a couple of years at the Performing Arts Center. By the way, they said that they executed 275 individual marketing plans there. I'm not sure if they understand what marketing plans are, um, but the idea of 275 individual marketing plans, because they contended, this person contended that there was a marketing plan for every single show that the center put on. Well, that's probably not exactly right. If you have but I get the general idea. That is, this is an event marketing job, right? This is an event marketing job, basically. Before that, they worked for at SeaWorld for 9 years, almost 10 years. Um, and so I do think that was an interesting gig working at SeaWorld. And of course, SeaWorld is an attraction, and so their job was to um, uh, market the attraction. And I don't think that that's a bad background, by the way, for marketing the high speed train, because to some degree the high speed train is perhaps an attraction. And you'll see here's a list of jobs that they have, but I highlighted a few in here. Their very first job of working with them. By the way, everybody at SeaWorld is a senior manager. Their first job was in the promotions and partnership part of the business, and then a little later on, they were tied into branded entertainment and alliance marketing. And of course, alliance marketing is partnership marketing, and they were into branded entertainment, which is working on projects where they provide entertainment content that is based from SeaWorld, that sort of thing. And so I think that that's an interesting thing. Um, but the bottom line here is that their background, this person's background was in event and attraction marketing, and there it turns out that their education was not in marketing. They were a communications major and a hospitality major, and a master's degree program. So they don't really have a traditional um, marketing education. Uh, but but they have lots of experience in marketing attractions and marketing events. Um, and they've run their own. I don't know if it's a marketing company or what it is, but they ran their own firm for a couple of years. Now, here's the bottom line. The bottom line is, let's take a look at, and I'm just going to use last year. We could use 2020. We could do a run up and a run down, run up to 2025 and then a run down of 2025. But let's just look at 2024. The forecasted ridership, they missed the forecasted ridership numbers by 54%. And they missed the 20 this shouldn't say 2025, it should say 2024 revenues. They missed them by $300 million or 72%. They missed those revenues by so their revenues were just over 25% of forecast, and their ridership was just over 50% of the forecast. So something's not working here, and I don't know if it's the marketing or if it's unrealistic forecasting or what it is, but something doesn't add up here. Obviously, um, and perhaps it's a combination of a number of different factors. And I don't want to blame these results on their marketing efforts because I don't think that their marketing efforts are horrible. I just don't think that they're probably as effective and as efficient as they could be. So the bottom line here is we need a different marketing strategy for Brightline West than what they're using at Brightline, Florida, because two reasons why we need a different marketing strategy. So, just going in and saying, let's use that strategy and let's drop it on the Brightline West and I'm done with the project, that's really not going to work. Two good reasons. One is the Brightline Florida strategy is not reaching expectations. We're not very close to any of the numbers. Now, and we can argue that those numbers are going to get better. They're probably going to be up another 20% this year. Um, Moving up 20% doesn't get them very close to where they need to be because the forecast for them to increase by 30% this year. So they're going to actually be losing ground again this year. The second reason that we need a different marketing plan is because Brightline West is a different situation. In some instances, Brightline West is in a better spot than Brightline Florida is. And in other cases, it's perhaps not in a better spot. The Brightline Florida high-speed train ends up at the Orlando airport, which then automatically gives them all kinds of transportation alternatives to get around in Orlando once they get there. The Brightline West is not going to end up at the Las Vegas Harry Reid Airport, and when it drops people off in Southern California, it's going to drop them off at our favorite location, Rancho Cucamonga. So we do need to think about this. They do need a different strategy, and that, of course, is your job. Come up with a different strategy.